So we are on page Chav Gimel, and we started Ois Yud Aleph. And we are approximately in the middle of that first paragraph of Ois Yud Aleph. The line begins humshachaso. And here we are talking about ohrot in contrast to kelim, which is an entirely different phenomenon. As we discussed yesterday, but I think last night we came to an understanding the significance of this ohrot, and that ohrot, regardless of how far it extends, it remains attached and representative and substantiated by the presence of the source, not like kelim that can have an orientation independent of their source. Like we said, you can take the table out of the house, of the room, and put it in the street, and it's still a table. In ohrot there is no such thing. Ohrot out of context just dissipate, don't exist. In discussing the principle of ohrot, there are many aspects that come into this. The first thing is that the ohrot atzilus come from the kav, and the kav, this is dobuk, is connected to the ohrot soif, but nonetheless it comes through the tzimtzum, and tzimtzum means, as we discussed, that there was a complete retraction of ohr, and then it was reintroduced. The fact that it was reintroduced, that itself gives the ohr a different orientation. It is not ohr in soif, it is not a primary presence, it is an introduced presence. So we're saying that despite that, this reintroduced ohr is reintroduced representing the original ohr that is before the tzimtzum. Even though this is now after the tzimtzum. This is a very subtle inyan to understand. Nonetheless, we discussed it last night, that in the inyan of ohr, under all circumstances, no matter how far it goes, the full context of what the ohr is doing here, what the ohr is representing, is always present with the ohr. And we had many different illustrations, many different misholim, some that allured us to this principle. And now we will, just to refresh, among all the other different ways that we presented this inyan, we'll to use the simplest one, that we have when you have a guest and a host, and we all understand the phenomenal principle of the presence of the host. The real thing is the presence of the host, not what the food that he serves, and not all other accommodations. Although in fact he is serving food, and you're partaking of the food, as you're partaking of the food, you recognize that it is in the food there is the element of the host, and if it were not for that, you couldn't eat it. Like if the host leaves and puts on the food in front of you and walks away, the food loses its ohr, its life sense. It's still food, but it's no longer It's no longer, it loses its significance. Because oil cannot exist without it connecting to the source. As we discussed many times, that is in fact the phenomenon of oil. The revelation of the source.
The chiddush here is that the kav is connected to the light that is before the tzimtzum. But isn't that sort of that, like you're just saying, light must do that, must connect that to its source? What could a person have thought, that the light is rooted somewhere else?
When it comes down to the tzimtzum, like we discussed, that tzimtzum means that there's a moment where it does not exist, it does not shine, and then it's reintroduced. Therefore, it's a created entity. Because the etzem was there all the time.
Therefore, it's a created entity. So, and you might think that that means it has the limitations of a creation. Excuse me.
Right.
But that's not possible with light.
That's exactly what we're saying.
Uh-huh.
This is the phenomenon of oil. Oil has a different nature completely.
That on the one hand it's a creation, on the other hand it's from infinity itself.
It represents the infinity itself, no matter how far it goes. Even goes through the tzimtzum. Like we said, oil coming through the tzimtzum has a different reference. Like in the oil of the sun, there is the presence of light, because the sun is present, and then there is a ray. A ray, it has a different implication than the presence of light of the sun. A ray means a focused ray that has a functional definition. The tzimtzum provides for the existence of a ray.
And the ray has to always be connected to its source.
But the ray itself is representative of the fact that there is the sun behind it.
And and that's a special feature. That doesn't kind of go without saying. That
it goes without saying if you understand it.
It needs to be mentioned because things in this world tend towards Kalim in a sense.
That's right. To the extent that even when you were pointing this out, I don't know what you're talking about. What we are saying is that if you enter this room and you see tables and chairs and people and whatever else is happening here, so from this world, from the perspective of this world, how this world presents itself, you would say, what you're seeing is tables and chairs and people, and you put it together and say, oh, there is something that can be constructed out of all of these little pieces, and you call it a bismedrash. And from the oil perspective, they say, no, this is just the opposite, the reverse order. This is a bismedrash, and as you're seeing everything falls right in place. It falls, so to speak, in line. Okay. There is nothing extraneous here, nothing that represents itself.
Right. The context is provided.
The context is the more important thing. This is what oil is.
It's not put together afterwards, it's what's original.
That's right. This is this phenomenal misunderstanding and misinterpretation of what the AyinBase is showing from the physical, the scientific approach. Why does a bird have a wing?
Why?
Because it,
Yeah, so it could escape better.
it can escape and it can. A bird has a wing because a bird has a spirit to fly. All right, now let's go inside. I said we're just below the middle of that section. And the line begins with the word humshachaso. And this is in the middle of a sentence, that even though the kav also comes with the tzimtzum, also meaning there is some similarity in the kav with the kelim. The kelim, there is a kind of a disconnect. In the kav also there is an element of disconnect. It goes to the tzimtzum. But nonetheless, even despite the fact that it goes to the tzimtzum, it is nimshach to the tzimtzum from the erisov shelifnei tzimtzum, from the oinus of that's before the tzimtzum. And we explained the principle of erisov versus the oil that comes from the tzimtzum. The tzimtzum is like a ray that has a functional definition. Erisov is not defined by functionality. Now we continue on that line. Vim heyois the humshachaso hu b'derech dilug hatzimtzum. That although, yes, we're saying that it's from the oir, ein soif, that precedes the tzimtzum, but it comes b'derech dilug by a skipping process of the tzimtzum. Skipping process. What is a skip? Skip means that there's a moment of a discontinuity. Therefore, it is not a straight connect. Commercial has cyrus, which is comparable to the hair that grow on the hefsek halgugelis, that grow and they have chayas. The chayas is so minimal you can hardly tell, except that you see it grows. And it comes to hefsek halgugelis through the skip, through the intervention or discontinuation of the gugelis. Gugelis means the skull. The skull does not have chayas in it. Does not demonstrate any chayas. Therefore, the cyrus, from that perspective, if they grow out of the gugelis, they do not connect to the source of life. However, this is going back again. No, that's not entirely true. There's a hefsek gugelis. There's an intermediate state of gugelis. But still, hari hasyrus yenki mehamoyach. But the cyrus draw their chayus from the moyach, from the brain. The moyach has the spirit of chayus that penetrates through the gugelis, through the skull, and ultimately, and this chayus is manifest in the form of cyrus. Cyrus of hair. So this is the muscle of cyrus in the gugelis. K'moi kein. So similarly, bechin as chuto yakiro kadisho. These are words from Kabbalah. Chuto yakiro kadisho. Chuto means the kav. Chuto means the string. Yakiro, the precious string. Kadisho, the holy string, which is the string of light, of oiris. Vikri mazol, which is called mazol. this precious ray of light that is properly called mazel. We explained yesterday what is the significance of the word mazel. Mazel is an interesting phenomenon. When we refer to
Before we get into that next mashal of Chuta Kadisha, before that we had Cyrus, and that's mashal to explain the way that the or is dilug over the tzimtzum, and we had that it comes al yedei tzimtzum, which shows on coming through it, and now we have jumping over it. And is that different? Is that the same?
It's not. It's not. It's the same thing. The tzimtzum intervenes, and now the ohr comes through a skipping of the tzimtzum, and reintroduced on the other side of the tzimtzum.
Is this like a parso, a filter that intervenes, and now the light is affected but yet comes through it? Is that it?
That's right.
You can think like
Just like the skull.
Okay.
The skull allows the chayas of the moyach to come through on the other side of the skull, and during this transition, there is no manifestation of chayas.
Okay. I'm not the fact that it's bringing two mashalim here shows that each one is.
What do you mean with two mashalim?
First is the Cyrus and the Gilgalis.
Right.
And then next is coming the Chuta Kadisha, the line.
Same thing.
It's holy lights.
No. The Chut and Yakira Kadisha. This is the Chut. This is the Kav. And in Kabbalah, the Chad is explained with the phenomenon of Cyrus.
Okay. And so what is? Okay, I guess I'm having a problem with the mashal. I guess it's being brought to help clarify this, but for me it just sort of raises other questions.
What, the Cyrus?
Yeah. I mean, my sense is that the hairs grow from hair follicles that are provided for by the blood supply, and they have a...
This is back to the controversy that we're having. That should hair from the grow from the kelia, from the chayas, from the ohr.
Okay, so the principle here in this mashal is that the brain, which is kind of inert, is a source of life, and yet there's even the skull, which is even less light, showing less sign of life, and yet outside of those two places come
chayas.
Hair, warmth, blood.
And the hair grow because there's an inner chayus. This is not through molecules and follicles.
Even though the hair and the nails of a dead man grows for a little while, that doesn't matter. We're saying here the real life of hair is from this inner source. The keli doesn't matter.
Wait a second. You said something extremely significant. The neshama leaves the body in a graduated manner, and it takes time for the body to disintegrate because there is a remainder of connection. Even to the extent that a very holy body retains an element of purity even after life itself had dissipated.
Okay, so
A Sefer Torah is written on parchment. Parchment comes from a cow. And yet, even after it is not possible to use it for reading, everything has been erased, and it no longer can retain its presence as a Sefer Torah. It retains its holiness completely. Apostle Sefer Torah is equally as holy as a complete Sefer Torah. So I was just discussing in the context of what we said, the Cyrus, that it's called a mazel. What is the implication to the implication of the word mazel? Mazel is an interesting thing. That on the one hand, mazel means that it's totally unexpected. I don't know where it's coming from. Something occurs, is mazel. We cannot trace it to anything substantial. On the other hand, there is that effect. There's a source of this mazel. What do these two opposite inferences represent? It represents a presence of chayus in a very distant and concealed manner. In very simple terms, the Gemara says an interesting thing. The Gemara says, "Odem yesh le mazel, behema ein le mazel." If a behema walks and it falls into a pit, there's nothing protecting the boy from a higher perspective. Odem yesh le mazel. If a person is walking in front of a pit, something is going to alert him. Somehow. Pay attention where you're walking. Because his awareness of his presence, awareness of the context where he is present, is on a much higher and more subtle level than that of a behemoth. As a matter of fact, the behemoth doesn't even have a sense of the context. And a human being is in context. And therefore, the context is providing us a safe haven, so to speak. And if he is not safe, it will alert him to it. Everyone here drives a car, right? Can you think of a moment where you made a turn and it was an extremely dangerous moment and somehow you came out safely? Hello?
Yes. This is Brooklyn, New York.
Can you think of such an unusual moment? Don't rely on it. But it's there all the time. You couldn't drive a car at 60, 70 miles per hour without this overall watchful eye. So this chut is called mazel. Harehu bibchinas dveikus be'oir insoy baruch. Despite the fact that there is a tzimtzum, and there is an interruption, and it comes to through a dilug and so forth, it still retains the element of dveikus bein insoy. You cannot see the connection, but that's what it is. Which means, the last line on this section is, humshachaso bibchinas giluy, which means it's the double be'erin soif, and the hamshacha from the erin soif is bibchinas giluy, in a giluy manner, which means that the erin soif does not really completely conceal itself from this hamshacha. Although it's a completely different hamshacha, it's a limited thing. Nonetheless, in the presence of the Ayin Sof is felt, in the sense that yes, you have a source, you have where you're coming from, you have a context. Having a context, as we said already, having context means you have a justification for being. You are representing much more than your own presence.
We're kind of saying that's unique human attribute.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, what we have from the Baal Shem Tov about the leaf that turns.
The what?
The leaf that turns over. That seems to be showing that everything has a context. They may not be aware of it, right? But all is within.
All has a kavanah lekis. Even at the level of Keli, there's a kavanah lekis. This is a different phenomenon. It's the phenomenon of hashgacha pratis. This is what we were discussing last night, trying to explain what is the meaning of oil. In oil, you cannot separate and distinguish between the cause and the effect. Why is this cup here? There is no separate presence of the cup being here, but for why it is here. In the leaf, there is a difference. But a human being has a different level of. Here represents the Meibesh himself, the godly reality itself.
So here, light, like we talked about the cup. Here, light goes with. Light is to do, or the leaf has to do with hashgacha pratis, which is kind of different from the light in the context that we're talking about with the cup and the human being.
What was that difference?
whether the element that you're discussing is part and parcel of the context, or it is within the context, but it has its own presence. Let's go for this. Explain to you. The human being in this medrash, in this shul, and the chair in the shul, they both belong in the shul. Is there a difference?
Yes.
Think about the difference. You have to interrupt now. Meantime, think about the difference. Have a great day.
To remain on this call, press 1.